Hi, everybody. I'm Candid Stanisci of CFL Football Talk. That's right. We added the word football in it because, as you know, after the Grey Cup's over, we sneak in the odd commentary about that other league, the No Fun League, which sometimes can be fun. Welcome to the Spanglish World Network on Zingo TV Channel 250. Please remember to download the Zingo TV app at the respective app stores for iOS and Android devices. While you download the app, make sure you can rate, leave, and comment. Both apps are absolutely free. Zingo TV is available on Google Chromecast, Amazon Fire TV Sticks, Roku Sticks, and also on all smart TVs 2016 forward. Don't forget to subscribe to Candid Stanisci 1030 on YouTube. So thank you so much for showing up, folks, ready to watch. And, of course, a very special thank you to the co-host, David Morassutti. David, how you doing?
I'm doing all right. Yeah.
Still haven't overcome the cold yet. They have a switch in radio. They call it the cough switch.
The cough switch. Oh, yes. I have a mute button on mine, so I can
Yeah,
touch the mute button. But
that's the same thing.
I,
That's
I
just
think I think when we were at the studios all those years ago, there was the thing that there was a cough. There was a cough button. I was like, huh, didn't even know they had those.
Yep, absolutely. That's old radio. That's when I was working on the old Marconi. That makes me old. See, never mind. Anyway, as I told the folks, we open up the discussion to football in general, and I got to tell you, the hot story right now is that Canadian quarterback, that guy that's so good, that won MOP. I'm just wondering, David. There was a possible injury to a certain Trevor Lawrence. Um, does this mean?
You know, it's funny if the Jaguars now there's a finicky rule about the third quarterback, having that third quarterback on the roster. But there was a situation where, let's say, the Jaguars did have Nathan Rourke on the roster for that game. CJ Beathard hurt his hand. The backup for
Yeah,
Jacksonville that came in, he hurt his hand. I think he fumbled the football and like hurt his hand. We saw him holding his hand and like, well, wouldn't it be nice if you had another guy that could come in and maybe do something for you? But yeah, the initially, I know that the initial report when Trevor Lawrence went out was that could have been a broken tibia or something like that. But then they said no, it's just an ankle sprain, which we know ankle
that's
sprains
not
can
any
be.
better.
Yeah, ankle sprains are tough because they have different degrees and things like that. And yeah, I mean CJ Beathard, they're gonna. I know people are really excited about Nathan Rourke, the possibility of him getting on the active roster and things like that. But CJ Beathard's been around the block a few times in the NFL, and that that's why Nathan Rourke hasn't gotten that opportunity because he's been on waivers a few times. He's been sitting
Absolutely.
on a practice roster. A team could have picked him up any time, but they haven't, right? And part of it is he doesn't have that experience in the NFL. Has yet that experience? Well, he's doing what he's doing right now. You're on a practice roster. You're showing coaches and things like that, and an opportunity like this could arise, right? If let's know Trevor Lawrence likely not going to play for at least a few weeks, one more injury to a quarterback, and guess what? He's the next man up, and that's how you get your opportunity to show what you can do. So it's exciting in that regard that you're one potential play away from getting into an NFL game, and I will say, a meaningful NFL game.
Very meaningful because we're in the downs. We're in the home stretch, and as far as playoffs are concerned, players, positions, seedings are still up for grabs. The good news is for him, and here's you know the whole point of if there's an injury and he becomes one of two quarterbacks on the sideline. As they say in par three golf, he's on the dance floor.
Yeah, no, you're not wrong on that. Um, I do think I do think when you're looking at the NFL landscape right now, Tom Brady came out a week ago, 2 weeks ago, and blasted the NFL for how bad the quality has been. And it's not just the quality of play all around, but most importantly, the quarterback position. It's been a real. This has been a like I tried. I was wondering, when was the last time we've seen so many not many quarterback injuries, but games where like I can't watch because the play has just been so brutal from the quarterback position. And it speaks to the good old question of is it a coaching thing? Is it like there's so many things like one person actually refuted Tom Brady and saying, well, you also played in one of the more uncompetitive divisions of football for so long, right? I do think that it's really hard. It's why quarterbacks get paid the most money. And when you have a good quarterback, when you have an elite, and sometimes that word gets thrown around too loosely, but the truly elite quarterbacks, those are the ones that get paid because teams don't want to lose the ones that they have.
And it does also depend on the team being built around the quarterback. We have seen quarterbacks change teams and play lights out. And it's not necessarily where you're drafted. We've got a quarterback in the NFL that was drafted in the first round, and he can't seem to get anything right. And then you got a quarterback on another team that's a guy that was picked actually he was picked last, wasn't he? Sorry, his name just eludes me right now. The last player picked last, was it last year?
Brock Purdy,
Yeah. And he's playing better than the guy who was a first round pick. So what does that tell you? Is it an identification of talent? Is it identifying the kind of talent, the kind of player that can help make your system better? Is it a system that's appropriate for that quarterback?
you just said it right there.
Right? And all these things that when it comes to football, I agree with you 100%. Quarterbacks, they stir the drink, they get the big money, but a quarterback by themselves can't do anything. They need a game plan. They need a team that can execute that game plan. For, like I said, it also has to be the appropriate game plan for that team and that quarterback. And then there's the factor, of breaks here and there. And I'm not just referring to the kind that puts you on the shelf. I'm referring to the other kind of breaks that involve confidence building. There's a lot of pressure on being a quarterback in the NFL. A lot of pressure. 30 plus teams, 30 plus quarterbacks you need for a starter in each team. So, that's a long list of quarterbacks that are necessary. And it always seems to come down to, for the most part, and I wonder about this, David. Why is it young quarterbacks that come in have more success, it seems, at the beginning of their careers than it do in the middle or at the end? Do you know what I mean? Like it seems like a quarterback almost has to get it right away in the NFL.
Well, I mean, in the 49ers case, yeah, they were when they drafted Trey Lance, that was supposed to be the guy that was going to learn under Alex Smith and take over and be the guy going forward. Sorry, Alex Smith, Jimmy Garoppolo.
Yeah, Gruff.
And with Brock Purdy, and look, the thing is quarterbacks are such a finicky thing because their success relies a lot on coaching. Hate to say it, right? You can have an amazing quarterback, but if your offense isn't run in the way to maximize on the strengths of that quarterback, you're in a tough position, right? And I'm not one of those people. I do think that there's a bit of a both cases are right with Brock Purdy, where having the right pieces around him, having all those weapons, makes him as good of a quarterback as he is. Because I looked at that Eagles game, and like people were
Oh my.
praising Brock Purdy, and he throws an easy 10-yard pass to Debo Samuel, and he takes it up 40 yards for a touchdown. I hate to say it, that's Debo Samuel doing that work, right? In a lot of ways. But I think what they like about Brock Purdy is he doesn't have to do everything because the system and the offense that puts him in that position to succeed. But, and here's the but, he has to go out and execute. And when he's not executing it, we've seen it, that's where they struggle. But unfortunately, they are right sometimes where when the 49ers have struggled, it's because their best players haven't been really available, right? I think they were talking about the record when all their offensive guys are healthy, and it's like they're one of the top teams in the NFL, right? When all their guys are healthy. Unfortunately, in football, you can't guarantee everyone to be healthy, and so for me, that is the big one. That's the big one right there with the 49ers is health, and that's a lot of the issues right now in the NFL. Is guys aren't healthy, and some guys are just not executing because there's either a bad system. But we've seen so many times where teams draft a quarterback high, like we're hearing about it right now with Bryce Young in Carolina, where they're like, did they make a mistake with Bryce Young? It's like, look, give the kid a chance, right? Because they see C.J. Stroud and what he's doing in Houston. Well, Houston set him up for success. C.J. Stroud, they did the worst. It's Bryce Young in Carolina. Carolina did the worst thing, which is trade the farm to go up to move up to get a quarterback. And now Chicago is going to be laughing when they go to the draft this year
Oh,
with 2 picks in the top, likely top 10, top 5, at least number 1 overall, probably at this rate. Like they did what a lot of teams, in my opinion, do wrong, and that is, yes, you can value quarterbacks. Okay, you can value quarterbacks highly, especially at the 1, 2, and 3. But to go out of your way, like the 49ers did when they got Trey Lance, they gave up draft capital to go up and get Trey Lance when, guess what? They found a guy in the 7th round that could do it for them.
yeah. Now, a good example of what we're talking about and the biggest concern or, you know, the light that I'd like to shine is you take a look at the the AFC. There was talk about in Buffalo, there was a quarterback there, a quarterback in Cincinnati, and of course, Mahomes in Kansas City. Those were three of the best quarterbacks in the NFL a couple of years ago, right? And oh, what a hard division it's going to be. These three guys are going to run into each other every year. It's going to be amazing. And that pitcher hasn't. Nobody squared that assumption. It's not what people thought it would be for various reasons, obviously. But watching Buffalo now, I got a buddy who's a real Buffalo Bills fan. His name's Bill. So I think that's kind of ridiculous. Your favorite team shouldn't have your name, but that's just me. And the way Buffalo's been losing, it's easy to point the finger at the quarterback, but to the subject that we talked about, there are a lot of people that are questioning the offensive decisions that aren't his to make. And I'll also add, they don't have a clutch receiver on that team. So what happens? Well, the quarterback doesn't look so good. And I made a reference to confidence. Well, shoot, if guys are dropping the ball every time you throw it to them, what kind of confidence are you going to have? So, you know, proof that a quarterback on their own doesn't make it work. It's a team effort, but the higher the upside on the quarterback, the more he can make that good system work while being executed appropriately, properly, and he can make the team that much better. The Bills right now aren't going to make the playoffs with what was a couple of years ago the second or third best quarterback in the league. So why is that? Like why is that happening? So that's why when we talk about quarterbacks, and you've made it very clear too that it doesn't matter how high you draft a quarterback. That doesn't guarantee success because we see this in the Canadian Football League. If I can drag the Canadian Football League into this conversation, every quarterback in the Canadian Football League can play pro football, but can they be on a team that has their ability as a highlight and accentuating the offensive plan? And can your team execute? Can your offensive line protect you? I think the quarterback situation in the Canadian Football League is a little more obvious to the eyeball, David, than it is in the NFL. I think it's a little more subtle in the NFL because the difference between two quarterbacks in the NFL is far slimmer than it is in the Canadian Football League. I don't know if it's because there's 32 teams in the NFL and 9 in the Canadian Football League.
Well, I mean, the NFL, the you always have to remember that the standard is supposed to be up at the top, right? In
Absolutely.
the CFL, we've seen guys come from schools that you wouldn't expect to see them lead a team to a championship at times, right? Like, where did Ricky Ray come out of? Fresno State.
Hmm.
Where did Nathan Rourke come out of? Ohio University. Oh, you mean the Ohio State University? No, 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 no. Ohio University. That other Ohio school, as they sometimes I've heard them referred as, right?
Yep.
You know, that's the thing, right? The NFL has always catered to the superstar quarterbacks, right? You see the guys where they're being drafted out of Alabama, Clemson. Well, not really Georgia. Georgia doesn't have that level of
Not
quarterback.
right now.
Not right now. I'm trying to think. But there are quarterbacks that come from non no schools that are as well known but still decent. Yeah, our producer Eduardo, Michigan. Yes, we know Tom Brady came from Michigan, but he wasn't viewed as the top. He was Mr. Irrelevant too at one point, right? And so and so I do think when you look at the quarterback position here, it's you get fortunate, right? Again, we talk about you have literally two different spectrums with Trevor Lawrence, who went first overall, and then in some cases has played like a first overall pick. And you have Brock Purdy, who went, as you said, Mr. Relevant, playing and leading his team to a 9-3 record right now. And you're like, why am I spending a first overall pick for one quarterback and another team spending a seventh round pick? Football can be random. Football can be like that. But it's all about the culture and success of your team, because I have seen it numerous times before where, again, I look at Josh Allen as a perfect example. It took him some time to get to where he was among the elite in the NFL, but in the NFL, it's very easy to tear down a quarterback too when they are the ones making the mistakes. And in Josh Allen's case, yeah, your confidence takes a hit when you go up against Patrick Mahomes so many times in the playoffs, and or with Patrick Mahomes, Joe Burrow, and guess what? You're on the losing end. It does take a hit to your confidence where you start doubting yourself, you start doubting things that are going around, right? Do I think that's the reason why Josh Allen hasn't played as well this year? Maybe not. I think the teams have kind of figured him out a little bit here, but yeah, I think you have to. The quarterback position is it's the hardest position to evaluate because there's so many different variables and styles you have to keep in mind here. Oh, you're on mute.
Coughing fits. I've had a couple of coughing fits, so I didn't want to bore you guys with that. I think my final comment is, and the point I'd like to make, which is consistent with everything we've said thus far, is the San Francisco team, the 49ers, in the playoffs last year, did not have a warm body on the sideline that had quarterback experience. And that team suffered a loss that I don't think they would have lost if they would have had an average quarterback under center. And this is why, the health of quarterbacks is important. Secondarily, a league has to be able, and we talk about this with the Canadian Football League. I really, until last year, I would never have thought of having this conversation about an NFL, an NFL team or the NFL when it comes to quarterbacks not having enough quarterbacks. But we saw it in the playoffs last year, and it affected a team. There is something to be said. What you said earlier about injuries, there is something to be said about how do we insulate teams when it comes to quarterbacks and having multiple injuries and not put them in an unprofessional position like San Francisco was put in the playoffs last year. That was an embarrassment to the league, and I can't even imagine what it felt like to be a 49er fan or the guys on the sideline or the guys up in the booth making calls and there's nothing you can do. It's horrible. It's horrible. So, they did make a couple of changes, right, in the NFL in regards to making sure, or at least trying to insulate teams so that that kind of situation does not repeat itself in the playoffs, especially. And that's the thing. It wasn't just a regular season game. The season ended for San Francisco a little abruptly because of that situation.
Yeah, I mean, it's it's like in hockey with you have two goaltenders, one goes down. Now you're like, oh, we got another one that could go down, and what you have as your contingency plan is a guy who's sitting in the rink who may or not get the call, and may or not have been a Zamboni driver at the community rink down the street, and is now coming into an NHL game. It's there's so many things when it comes to the salary cap and roster sizes and things like that, but it's the NFL. You're not telling me there's not quarterbacks out there. I'm going to put McLeod Bethel Thompson up there that would kill to be a third quarterback, earn an NFL paycheck, even if they don't get into a game, or the very slight chance they get into a game. The NFL puts itself in this situation where you know teams are shooting themselves in the foot. The league is shooting themselves in the foot, and also you know certain positions get highlighted the most, but then you see how bad some of the quarterback playing has been, and you're just like, this is the NFL. This is what they consider to be prime NFL football. You see, like that gaming is as soon as Purdy went down and then his backup went down. I think it was Josh Johnson was
Yeah, I
the
think that's
guy
what.
that came in. I said I can't watch this because I already knew what was going to happen.
And it only took a couple of series to figure that out.
So I I I, yeah, I'm with you in that. You know what, like the the NFL can easily fix this, but it's the stubbornness of the owners and the league in some cases to not recognize how much it hurts the product in a lot of ways.
All they have to do, if they're worried about the cap, when players get injured, the player that's injured goes in the sideline. I'm not sure if I think in the NFL too, that cap space can be reallocated, right? So if you sign a guy, let's say we're talking about that nice kid in Florida, the one we like so much coming out of BC. He signs a contract based on being the number three, a guy who doesn't play. But then his contract says, well, if you start a game or if you play in a game and you play X amount of snaps, you get this much of a salary. So I don't think it can be an issue of money. Because, if you need a third quarterback, it's because your big money quarterback can't play. And, every league, when they lose a contract, those contracts are insured. Not only are they not a cap problem, they're not a financial problem really either,
Mhm.
right? I said that would be the last
Look,
thing I
look,
said.
look at the valuation of these NFL teams and what these teams make. They can afford it. Simply put, they can afford it. You see what those TV contracts and things like that. There's no reason why that can't be done.
I'm sure the Canadian Football League doesn't want to hear that the NFL is going to use more quarterbacks. They add one quarterback to the league. That's 32 of them. That's over three times as many as the CFL need to start. So that's a bit of an issue, I guess, for them. But regardless, I just don't think I've never believed, never thought that the difference between when you look at all the quarterbacks that are professional right now, you take forget about the CFL, just stay in the NFL. You take the first 14 or 15 quarterbacks, and the talent level between each one is X. The talent level from 14 to 28 to 36 to 60 is even less. I think it's as you go deeper, you end up with players that are more equal, and that equity within it, there are possibilities like we saw, like you said, with the last player picked, and he's having a good season. It's all about, and this started with me talking about our great Canadian quarterback getting an opportunity to play in the NFL. So if he can get on the sideline, if he gets to do a couple, what we saw what he did in the exhibition season, I know that isn't really that big a deal, but I do think what he did and how he did it is a big deal. and he did some stuff that was pretty magical. And I think, given the opportunity in the NFL, he will do some more magic. He's a big enough player. He's got enough arm, and he's definitely got the mental makeup to be a really good quarterback. And I believe in the NFL as well.
No, I know. I definitely agree on that.
All right, let's talk. Let's move over to the Canadian Football League. Just the quarterback situation. Watching that game with Buffalo and watching Josh, his reputation just sink like a rock. So let's talk about coaching. There's a new coach in Saskatchewan, and they have brought in a defensive coordinator. Not usually where they search, but it's one step up from where they picked up their last coach, which was special teams. Generally speaking, of course, I'm not being specific because there's a pretty good coach in Winnipeg that has done a pretty good job. So now you have, and what surprised me in watching the interviews and reading some of the stuff about him, how much he wanted to be the Rider coach.
Yeah, I mean, look, you get the opportunity. I mean, if you're going to go to a team and have all the resources and everything you need as a coach, Saskatchewan is near or at the top of the list. Like, you go there and, like, everything is to the nines there, right? You know the market's like, and you know what? Yeah, the team has flaws, but it was a team that was competitive last year, right? And with Corey Mace, you know it's a chance to have your input and your say on the team, leave your mark on the team, right? And what better what better team market to do it than in Saskatchewan?
2 seasons as the defensive coordinator in Toronto. 2 seasons of Frank and David going into the locker room after every game. 2 seasons of talking to players, listening to players, being a part of the atmosphere within the locker room. I bring this up because it's very important. If I had a nickel for every time we were in that locker room, whenever we went to talk to a defensive player, how everybody always said on the defensive side of the locker room talked about Corey Mace. Corey Mace is the man. Corey Mace is the guy that makes it work. He's the guy that, all this stuff that they've said. I'm not pumping his tires, folks. He hasn't given me anything. But I tell you you know, as a reporter, the biggest skill we have is to listen and hear between the lines. And I can assure you, with what I've heard the past couple of years between the lines, and of course we've heard a lot of stuff right out, straight out, right? But the fact is, this guy's going to leave with a few Argos. There's going to be a few Argos going to Saskatchewan. I am convinced. I am positive, which means he's going to have a bit of a group there that he can build on and fill around. That's why I'm really curious as to what the Argos will do for their defensive coordinator, because Corey Mace leaves a giant hole. And let's be honest, if we're going to be honest here, and as a reporter I should be honest, the offense has not been the strength of the Argo team these 3 years. It has been the defense. The defense has been the one that has made, in my opinion, not just about winning a Grey Cup, but about being a great team. And the biggest plays, I'm going to say this, and you can hate me for saying this, folks. The biggest plays are the easiest to make on offense. The hardest, biggest plays to make are on defense. And there were a lot of big plays made on defense while Corey Mace was the defensive coordinator here in Toronto for the Toronto Argonauts. And that's what Saskatchewan's getting. They're getting a real good leader, but it makes real good judgments on players and has a system that sets up his players to do great things. So congratulations to him for going to the Riders. But I have faith in the Argos as well, because they brought in unknowns. The head coach 3 years ago came here, won the division, has won it 3 times in a row, has won a Grey Cup, and that's his first 3 years of experience as a head coach. So I think Pinball and company there have a good identifying eye when it comes to talent and hiring leaders, coaches who can win.
Well, and look, yeah, like as Ryan Dinwiddie wasn't a known commodity when he came to Toronto. Corey Mace was never a defensive coordinator before he came to Toronto as well, right? Everyone starts somewhere. And yeah, obviously there's concern if you're the Argos right now because you're worried about who's going to follow. And it happened when Calgary lost Dinwiddie. There are players from Toronto that came from Calgary. Started calling them the damn Toronto Stampeders for God's sake, right?
Yep.
Now here's the thing with Toronto, and they do have quite a few defensive players that they have to lock up. The other thing can be said about who could they get as a replacement, because if they get a defensive coordinator, now it could go one of two ways. And I was talking to Ben Grant of X's and Argos and the Argos color commentator on radio about this because he knows better than anyone what's the next logical step for Toronto. And he said, personally, I think they could hire from within. Right? They can go with one of their assistant coaches. What's the best way to keep your own players around? Go and hire from within guys who have worked with players, whether that's Coach Joshua Bell, Coach Kevin Ivan, who's been there for a while. That would be an easy, logical step for Toronto in a lot of ways. Promote from within. The other option is look at who Saskatchewan got rid of, Jason Chivers, among the top defensive coordinators at one point in the CFL. Saskatchewan, very well known for their defense. He could easily recruit and bring guys, and guys may want to go play for him. But I think it's also about the team itself. How many players may want to go and play for the Argos? There are quite a few that wanted to come to Toronto. Toronto's becoming a little more of you know, a spot that players want to come to. Saskatchewan too, because we know that Saskatchewan is, if you want to play in the CFL, Saskatchewan's one of the top markets. So Corey Mace already had that going for him. Yeah, but you also wonder how much of the you know fabric itself within Toronto. And the other interesting note, I don't know if you saw it, but the head coach was on a radio station down in Idaho, where he's from, and was asked about potentially wanting to give the NFL a try. And that right there, if you're Toronto, that's where you have to get worried a little bit. When you are now having to worry about not only your defensive coordinator, but your head coach thinking about other opportunities as well. And ladies and gentlemen, when the NFL opportunities are out there, don't think for a second that they won't. They'll consider it, and heck, they should, because we all know that you only get so much time to get those opportunities and make the most of those opportunities. And NFL coaching money is life changing money, and it opens up a lot of doors for you. So if I'm the Argos, I wouldn't be too concerned about losing Mace. It's a tough loss, that's for sure. He's a great person too. We spent time talking with him at after the CFL awards, and that was a player, that was a person that looked like he wanted to get back in onto the field, right, and see his team back on the field and make up for that loss. So it's tough, but yeah, I'm more concerned about what happens within that own coaching staff and guys who may want to consider taking advantage of the success that Toronto has had and catapult them further now.
We talked to him after the awards at the casino. Had a nice conversation. He was very excited, like you said, about getting back to it. Looking forward to the season. A very amiable guy. It was great working with you, and he was very kind and generous with his words, and very likable person. So I can see why the players respect him. He treats people with a lot of respect. I felt very respected, and I think he even over respected me. I think he's a great guy, and I'm glad to see what he's doing. On the subject of losing him and then the head coach, it becomes both become a big issue. Losing a coach in an off season is one thing. Losing your head coach and your defensive coordinator, when you think of the head coach being the offensive brain, and then also if you happen to lose the defensive brain first and then lose the offensive brain, it's a bit of an opportunity for a team to reshuffle. The Argos right now, uh, I think I think they'll be fine if Dinwiddie stays. Dinwiddie told us, remember last year, he didn't think that Corey Mace wouldn't be. a head coach this year. He told us, if you remember, after they won the Grey Cup over there by the hockey arena, he told me, he said, he'll be coaching in the Canadian Football League. In fact, that wouldn't surprise me if he had my job. And that tells me that's a year ago that Dinwiddie was thinking about moving on to greener pastures. And I don't think the greener pastures for him are another CFL team. I think it is the NFL that he has an eyeball on. He spends a lot of time following what goes on in the NFL. When the Argos hired him, remember the pandemic was there and there was a whole season lost. That whole season, Ryan Dinwiddie used to follow the NFL as if it was the Canadian Football League. And it's something, he devours football. He loves football, and he loves Toronto. He lives here. So, that's the other thing about being a coach in Toronto. Pinball expects and wants to hear from the person they hire that they're going to live in Toronto year round. That's a request that has almost a demand kind of thing about it. That's what Pinball wants. He wants people who are all in Toronto. So if and when they do bring somebody in, it'll be somebody you'll find that he'll be staying in town all the time and be available for whatever reason that the Argos need him and the organization needs him. And I believe that's an important function of having a really good team, and also a very good function of the players being able to contact their coach and always being available for stuff that a question, answers, ideas, that kind of stuff. And when of course, the GM is coming up with ideas about what players to bring in, it's a down home approach. They're all here. They get together. They have a conversation. I get it. Phones are awesome, but nothing beats the fact that you're in the same room together. And that's what the Argos have, and that's what they've tried building. So the next guy they get, he'll be a guy who stays here. He'll be a guy who a man or a woman, that'll be the defensive coordinator. So it'll be interesting. Hopefully for this year, Dinwiddie stays in Toronto, and the Argos don't have to replace two very important members of their organization.
No, for sure. And look, you as if you're I mean, right now, if Ryan Dinwiddie like strikes me as someone that's not going to just leave Toronto high and dry in a way that I don't remember too much about the Chris Jones situation when he left Saskatchewan, right? Because he wins in Edmonton, then he just ups and leaves to Saskatchewan. He's in Saskatchewan, ups and leaves to go to the NFL, and everyone seemed to be in a tissy fit over that. I don't remember. I couldn't remember too much on the details on that, but Ryan Dinwiddie strikes me as someone that's not going to just leave Toronto high and dry. He's having conversations with Pinball, with Murphy, any of the guys in management there. They're already, if this was already a potential opportunity or option, they've discussed the option and they figured out what could potentially be the succession plan in that regard. To me, that I think is what has been the strength of Toronto's front office, is being the team that's not thinking about the now all the time, but thinking about the future a little bit as well.
Yeah.
They kind of said McLeod Bethel Thompson's not coming back, but we feel good about this other guy right now, and Chad Kelly, right? I think like Ryan Dinwiddie's thinking about this stuff. He's always thinking ahead, even though sometimes when they talk about going 1-0 in a week for a game. Yes, that's the coach's job, but the coach also has to think about things ahead of time. They're always planning and scheming and things like that. So if I'm Toronto, yeah, it's definitely tough to hear all this stuff and wondering if everything that's they've worked so hard to put together comes apart. I think they know that nothing ever lasts forever, and you always have to be thinking about what's next and what's next and what's next. And really, to me, that's not even Toronto's not even the most intriguing position right now in the CFL. Look at what's going on in Hamilton, right? Frank,
The chairs have moved.
what did I have been saying this ever
I I
since
had
the decision
I
was
had
made.
the same
We've been
idea.
talking about this for so long.
How long is he going to be the GM and
How
head
long is he
coach?
going to be able to do everything? You can either be one or the other. And the thing is, he's president, so he's in a way he's pinball, but his title's viewed a little bit
He's
higher.
Pinball, Murphy, Dinwiddie.
He was, but now he's not anymore,
No, not anymore.
right?
Now
I
they've
think
resurrected. They've
I think it's a
resurrected Ed Hervey as the GM.
realization from the organization that, you know what, we need to give you less, and that's never a bad thing. I understand it. There's definitely, you know, I would say for Orlando, like it would have have such a big, I wouldn't say bragging rights because that's not the right word. I don't think it's like pride or ego or anything, but I just think when you have a certain way you want to run an organization, you feel like it's better just to do it yourself, or you tell the owner, hey, that coaching cap that we keep the management cap, I can get around that. We can work this around a little bit where you give me a little more responsibility, and guess what? We'll be able to get in all these other coaches. And now the question though is what's the next step? Who's the coach? Because to me, they don't do this without having an idea of who the coach is. And everyone's like, oh, it's got to be Scott Milanovic. It's got to be Scott Milanovic.
That's my
But
bet
that's your bet. But why wasn't that announced when Steinauer made the move?
because I think Milanovic is listening to other. A big one just dried up. I
Yeah.
mean, who else is looking for a head coach?
No one. Like, there's no other, unless Ottawa for some reason feels like they want to make that change, but I don't think they want to make another change right after
Well, they
they.
did say at the end of the year that he is staying. Their head coach
Mhm.
is staying.
Yeah.
So Montreal's not going to get rid of their coach, not right now.
Nope.
So in Toronto, how can Toronto get rid of their head coach?
Maybe that's something he's considering. If Dinwiddie actually acts on his desire to go to the NFL, maybe then Milanovic is like, all right, Toronto, going back to Toronto, because I could see that as a possibility. Wouldn't surprise me, but again, this is very hypothetical if Dinwiddie were to ever leave. I think right now for Milanovic, yeah, your best bet if you really want to be a head coach, it's in Hamilton. But part of me is also like they already did the Saskatchewan roundabout, and he wasn't even the finalist. It was between Mace and Buck Pierce, and to me, I don't. Yeah, I'm wondering if maybe he's also considering another NFL a chance to go back down to the NFL. To me,
I'll,
like that, I understand some people are like, oh, it can't be Milanovic. Well, maybe Hamilton wants to see if Buck Pierce is really really insistent on becoming a head coach. Right? He already got permission to go to try Saskatchewan. Maybe Hamilton's a more attractive offer. There's a lot. It's going to be a very interesting few weeks when it comes to that situation because I didn't expect it to happen right away for Hamilton. I thought they would have announced this something like this happened at the end of the season. I guess they wanted maybe something changed, and as you said, maybe a shoe's going about the drop that we don't know about. Can hear you.
I'm really not sure either. I do believe, and I think that Milanovic, not necessarily. I'm not saying he can write his own ticket, but if what's the next best thing to being able to write your own ticket? Milanovic is there. A couple of Grey Cups, a lot of CFL experience. Recent. 2017 isn't that long ago. It's 6 years ago. They're not bringing a guy from 20 years ago. So it's not like he doesn't understand the game of today. And he has spent this last year up close and personal in Hamilton watching the Canadian footballing and what it has to offer in 2023. So, he's well versed in the game.
Hmm.
He should be able to get a job and handle the job well. He's won before. He can win again. Again, though, it has to be a situation that puts him in a winning position. So in Hamilton, the biggest concern there is the quarterback. Now, is what happened? Is what happened? I wonder. I have no reason to say this, folks, but I wonder how much, uh, let's say, the relationship between their $1 million, their $5 million, $6 million quarterback, Bo Levi, and the former head coach. I wonder how much of that, if Hamilton feels he's the guy they need, and it isn't just something that the organization felt, but more the head coach felt, and there was a bit of a falling out between them, then does it mean now that there's a reconsideration with Bo Levi Mitchell if, let's say, Milanovic becomes the head coach?
It's tough, right? Again, like the fact that they're saying they hadn't announced the head coaches was throwing me off with this whole situation,
That
right?
means there's gonna you're wait like you said it, another shoe's gonna drop. Somebody's got to take the job. And here's the thing: we're in the middle, we're well almost the middle of December. Free agencies in a couple of months, right? Well, free agency, you have to know what you have before you can decide what free agents are going to go after. So there's a
Mm-hmm.
couple of months here of the head coach and company have to make some decisions. And the decisions that are going to be made in Hamilton have to do with new people at the wheel. So,
Oh, of course.
it's time. It's time for a head coach to be signed, so that they can begin the process of building the team, which starts with who are we bringing back, and then when we know who we brought back, then fill in the outside. You don't fill your team with free agents and then go and then sign players. Free agents are expensive. They have to be critically determined, and a lot of thinking, a lot of decisions go in to which free agents you sign, and a lot of it has to do with what positions you feel the re-signing or players that you've signed, um, you know, are in, and what gaps does that leave you? So, and so you've got a head coach that's got to get up to speed there. I mean, Milanovic has been with the organization, but his ideas haven't run the organization like they would if he's the head coach.
Yeah, no, exactly. And you do wonder if maybe there hasn't been that fit with the organization, and that's why, maybe the vision doesn't line up.
It has to.
Oh,
I
yeah, no,
just
no,
can't see. I just can't see you emptying chairs in the organization without knowing who's going to go in them. It's not like Orlando was fired.
true.
I mean, technically speaking, right? He wasn't fired. He was
No,
just
he wasn't.
relocated.
It was a reshuffling within the
Yeah.
organization. Yeah, yeah. It's the most bizarre situation I think in the CFL right now because so much of again what happens Hamilton controls quite a bit, right? Because you know what they decide to do will potentially have a ripple effect if they decide to hire an external candidate for their head coaching job, right? And we know that Hamilton's a market that shifts things in the CFL.
And does Milanovic want to stay an offensive coordinator?
Well, that's the thing, right? For me, Milanovic doesn't screen to me as an offensive coordinator type. To me, he's a head coach. He's done it. And the people who are like, oh, why are they? Why is this like? Why is why are people saying that Milanovic is the guy? This is a guy who won, right? He won as a head coach, and to me, that's something you can't discredit. Yes, I know winning isn't everything when it comes to um, hiring a head coach. Like that shouldn't be the only requirement, but a team like Hamilton that hasn't won in a long time could use a little bit of that.
We talked about the players. There's also other coaches that the head coach wants to work with.
Hmm.
So, there's that too.
Of course, yeah. It's the that situation to me screams a lot of peculiar thoughts in terms of how it all plays out.
Montreal wins the Grey Cup. They have a wonderful experience in winning the Grey Cup. We have an organization that I think made an incredible run to the Grey Cup. Considering, they were literally the beginning of the season, they were a tire fire. No ownership, players going, well, I don't know if I want to sign in this organization the way it is. A lot was made by the Montreal Alouettes and all the players there, starting with Fajardo, about how they were number 9 out of 9 teams. Uh, I heard it less from media. I heard it more from players who gave up on that organization, and they don't talk about that as much as I think was the situation, even more than how they were disrespected by the media. The situation they got put in, players that, well, look who didn't win a Grey Cup. The players who aren't there. Quite a few key players who have been with the organization for a long time were not there to be a part of the Grey Cup win. Players that, well, starting with a certain receiver that, was central to the organization and the team. And him not winning a Grey Cup in Montreal, who would have thought that? If last year you would have said Montreal's going to win the Grey Cup and they're going to do it without, that phrase just, to me, is more ludicrous and more obvious, a bigger question than even, well, they're 9th this year, they'll never make it to the Grey Cup.
Yeah, I mean they rode that, right, and it's an attitude, it's a belief. You remember my column from that Grey Cup was belief was the factor behind that Grey Cup win. So
And that's
now that's you're going to look at teams and say, you know what, don't necessarily have to be the flashiest team. We have to have the right mix, and maybe that's something they'll have to look at going forward.
and that thing about getting in on a roll into the playoffs,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yeah.
Because that, to me, that is the biggest story here. Winnipeg. What happened there?
I think that's our little notification that we're coming to the end.
Yeah, we still have 2 minutes. But anyway, no, okay. Well, okay. So I'll let you have the last word. We'll be
No,
watching the
you know
NFL.
what? This might be one of the more intriguing CFL off seasons in a long time. I know Willie Jefferson just resigned in Winnipeg, but I'm curious to see if there's any reinvention with a lot of teams, not just coaching and players, but in philosophies as well.
There was a lot of talk about retirements,
There were.
right? Okay. He's David Morassutti. I'm Candid Frank Stanisci. I want to thank you for watching the program. This, of course, has been CFL Talk, CFL Football Talk. For David Morassutti, I'm Candid Frank Stanisci. Thank you for watching CFL Talk. Airs live Mondays at 9 p.m. Today was a special occasion. This show can also be heard on the Spanglish World Radio Network for CFL Football Talk, news, entertainment, and other sports programming we offer. Please check out SpanglishWorld.ca. Spanglish World. Watch it, hear it, read it, download it, and live it. And don't forget Candid Frank Stanisci on YouTube. Subscribe. Thanks for watching.